With this here, this ain't about being flashy. This is game day, son. It's only about one thing. Getting that W. That's the only thing that matters right now. Boy, are you ready?
The past is the past, you know? It's a new day, bro. My day. Gotta do it now.
Blindside Fantasy Football Podcast back for another Friday episode. Going to obviously recap last night's Seahawks-Cardinals game and then jump into the previewing of the Week 7 games. We got some bold predictions for you. Rob was nice enough to come back and join us for the Friday podcast. How's it going, Rob?
It's doing good. It's doing good. Great Friday. Looking forward to the games this weekend.
Awesome. And we're lucky that Matt got to grace our presence again and come back for the podcast. It's good to have you back, Matt.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to be back. I got to listen. You guys did a great job Tuesday even without me. I was surprised with that. Like you said, I missed my chance to gloat. I love to do that. I just figured I'd talk a little bit about my 4-2 home league team, the only one that matters. Coming off beating Marcus 2 weeks ago and then Rob this week, actually, leading the league in scoring. And I got a pretty good starting lineup, I think. Stafford, Moreno, McCoy, Victor Cruz, Demaryius Thomas, Calvin Johnson, Jordan Cameron. That's not bad, huh? Cream always rises to the top, I guess, is what you could say. You know what, Marcus? I'll congratulate you because you know what? I think you're right. I could be that cream to the Moreno and Blackman cookie.
Just 2 words, trade raping. Trade raping.
Oh, we'll talk about that later if you want to. Mr. Cohesiveness with his number one friend.
All right, so let's jump into the recap of last night's game. Seahawks Cardinals. Russell Wilson.
Good to be back.
Three touchdowns last night as the Seahawks roll past the Cardinals. He's now averaging over 18 fantasy points the last 5 games, despite only throwing for over 250 yards once in those 5 games. Rob, who do you think? Is he back to being a top 10 quarterback?
I think he is, and I think he showed us signs before the game that he was on the rise. I mean, he had 3 straight games with the 60 yards rushing, which is Russell Wilson-esque, and I think he's definitely on the way up, using his feet for more plays, and then obviously with Percy sitting in the background there, getting ready to go. I think Wilson's a good guy to hold on to now and see what he can do.
Matt, what are your thoughts on Wilson?
Yeah, it was nice to see, as we've been seeing, the design running plays too. Like you said, the passing numbers aren't going to be there. This is a running team. They use the defense, they control the clock, and they win football games. And Wilson doesn't make mistakes, although I guess we can't really say that about last night with the fumbles. But they got the win, and that's just what he does. He's a solid player. I think you're right. Yeah, top 10. I was kind of fading off of him, but like you said, Rob, with Harvin coming back and the way he's been playing lately, yeah, I'll buy that.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely looked really, really good last night. I'm kind of hesitant about putting him back in that top 10 just because he's getting the fantasy points, but it's not by throwing the ball. I'm not so certain that, maybe like last night, the 29, 30 rushing yards, that type of thing happens consistently, but not the 60 and 70 that we were seeing in previous weeks. It's just hard to call anybody not throwing for 250 yards, which isn't that much, not throwing for that much consistently. Being a top 10 quarterback for me, I mean, I want a guy that's going to be throwing at least that much to even consider in the top 10. But I mean, you can't deny the numbers that he's putting up. But I got to ask you guys, if you had to own one Seahawks wide receiver, not named Percy Harvin, which guy would you want on your team right now?
Well, I wouldn't. I just told you my roster. You mean without an all-star team like mine?
No one cares about the team, Matt.
Without an all-star team like mine, I'd probably take. I don't want any of them. My God, I guess Sydney because the touchdown opportunities there. But I hate them all. They just don't throw enough for me unless they're Percy.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I don't think anyone's ownable beyond Percy. It'll be a different guy every night. I'd be shocked to see one guy sort of emerge as Percy's number 2 or as their number 1 in his absence. I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, Rob, he did ask you though. League sizes, they're all different. Like if you pick one, you know what I mean? Who's your favorite? I got Rice, but
I say both of you guys were kind of avoiding the question there.
I'd probably, if I had
I said Rice.
24-team league, I guess I'd go Tate.
Tate, all right. Marcus, what about you?
I'm the same way. I'm saying Golden Tate just because I think he's getting a little bit more targets. He's, Wilson's looking for him a little more. So for me, it's Tate. I understand that Sidney Rice had that touchdown yesterday, but he really hasn't been looking his way overall. So I would go Tate, especially if I need somebody a little more consistently. But Cardinals side of the ball, so much for Andre Ellington taking over, huh, guys? 13 carries for Mendenhall, only 3 for Ellington. Neither one of them obviously did anything in this game. I just can't imagine why. We all watched the game last night. Mendenhall looked terrible. What is Bruce Arians thinking? What is he looking at in Mendenhall that he decided to keep feeding, him in this game? It just didn't make any sense to me.
I think I know what it is. I think what it is a lot of pressure with Palmer week to week. Again, last night, I think they're just more comfortable with that kind of protection from Mendenhall. Because as you see, Palmer, it seems like every time he's dropping back, he's throwing off his back foot because the pressure's coming.
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's the offensive line and the fact that he's just he's the veteran. They're probably more comfortable in the blitz pickup type stuff.
And I think they're willing to work him more. Arians is concerned. He's been quoted concerned about Ellington's workload. Obviously, hopefully, he's not so concerned that he's going to max him out at 3 carries a game. I think that's over conservative for how much work you should give a young running back. But he's not going to be the premier guy anytime soon. He's not going to have a heavy workload. Just hopefully he produces more than this.
After a 2 for 17 night from Larry Fitzgerald and now only averaging 60 yards a game on the season, are you guys officially worried about Larry Fitzgerald?
I am, yeah. That's one of the reasons I traded him early on this year. The hamstring issue, those linger, and it's clear that he's not 100%. And then after Palmer started not panning out like I thought he might, I sold early, and I'm glad I did. I'm a little worried about Fitzgerald moving forward.
Matt, let me ask you. You were big on Drew Stanton early in the preseason, so before they obviously got Carson Palmer in there. If they make a move and go to Drew Stanton, do you think that helps Larry Fitzgerald at all? I guess it couldn't hurt at this point, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt. But the thing, it goes back to this offensive line. It's the same problem they had last year. I don't know if it matters who's back there. It's just when you don't have time as a quarterback, it's tough. So, it's his backup. There's a little bit of talk. You told me that a little bit earlier. We'll see what happens there. But I don't know. I think I'm with Rob. I'm starting to worry about Larry, whether it's Drew, whether it's Carson. This offensive line is a big problem.
Yeah, it's just letting everybody through there, and I think that's exactly what you guys are touching on with Mendenhall. That's the reason why he's back there, is to kind of give a little bit more pass protection for him. Obviously isn't helping too much, but yeah, Fitzgerald's just a lost cause, I think, this year. I'll talk about a trade offer that I saw on Twitter the other day about Larry Fitzgerald that I thought was interesting that got denied, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Bucks Falcons, the injury woes continue for the Falcons here. Roddy White and Steven Jackson already ruled out for Sunday. By missing this game, this is Roddy's first game he'll miss in 133 games. But the nice thing here is it's going to give him obviously the 3 weeks to heal now from between the bye week and then the time in between until their next game now. So moving on a little bit more, the Bucks here, they're 5th best against opposing running backs and have allowed 29.8 points per game the last 3 games to wide receivers. So with Roddy White out, Julio Jones obviously out, Harry Douglas last week just 2 catches for 6 yards. What do you think they do here? Do you think they lean on the run a little bit more until Roddy gets back? Do you think Harry Douglas has a big game here? Do you think Tony Gonzalez? Do you think they keep going and try to feed him, even though Gonzalez is getting double and triple teamed? What do you think, if you're the Falcons, what do you think their offensive game plan is for this?
They've already talked about, basically, they said Tony's going to be the number 1 wide receiver this week. So I don't know what that means. They're not going to line him up there. It's going to be a number 1 target type thing. Harry Douglas, we've talked about him before. I'm not a big fan of the talent. I think he's a serviceable wide receiver, but when there's nothing else...
Talent? Can we really call him a talent?
Right, I think that's what we said, yeah. So a serviceable human that plays football, I guess.
A body with no injuries.
Right, exactly. Pretty much at this point in Atlanta. Yeah, so but when there's no other targets and you've got a quarterback as good as Matt Ryan, I guess, if you're hurting, a bye week fill-in, some injury replacement, the worst thing that's going to go out there. I think it's going to be more of the same, though, as far as the game plan. Jack Woods is a solid player. I can call him a talent, I think. So it's going to be throw the football, I think. Matt Ryan is the heart of this offense. We'll see if it can last, though. I don't know how good they're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely cause for concern. I think Douglas is going to stand out just because of the opportunity, obviously. But they did say they're going to run some more 2 tight end sets. Toilolo is kind of a name being thrown around there in some deeper leagues as a tight end sleeper. So I think, and his size as a red zone target, I don't think you can ignore that in a deeper league. Your 14, your 18-team leagues, your larger leagues. But I do think Douglas will be the guy. I think Roddy, one thing about Roddy right now, I think he's a really good buy low. I still believe in him long term. If you're a team, you know you're going to be in the playoffs. Matt seems to think he's going to be in the playoffs, so maybe Matt would target him. But if you think you're in the playoffs, I might give a flyer on him if you can stash him on your bench.
Rob, I appreciate. Rob, I just want to say I appreciate that you went with that tight end's last name there. I didn't even want to try it. Taliola, what is it? You did a good job.
Isn't that YOLO?
I've been practicing.
I think. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You're not starting any of those guys. But Bucks side of the ball, Mike Williams sounding like he's going to be inactive for this game again. Atlanta has allowed at least 1 touchdown to opposing wide receivers in every game this year. So, VJax last week, 9 catches, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. We could see a lot of the same here in this game with Mike Williams out again. Doug Martin averaging just 3.5 yards per carry this year, and the Falcons are only allowing 85 yards per game to opposing running backs, and they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game because of the bye week. So I think you're staying away from, if you can help it. I mean, it's kind of hard because obviously you drafted Doug Martin pretty high, but if you can help it, tame your expectations on Doug Martin this week. Meanwhile, Vincent Jackson, I think we're going to see another big game out of him. Bengals, Lions. Megatron listed as questionable, but has been participating in practice this week, so it's sounding like he's going to be a go. Matt, you're a Megatron owner, and obviously you got some pretty powerful other wide receivers to choose from, but if Megatron does play, is he definitely a must-start?
No, the guy I traded him for, like a Blackman, I would have serious thoughts about that, and I think I would play Blackman. I'm not kidding when I say, yeah, I made the trade for Calvin this week. I like it for the long term, but I honestly like Calvin a little bit less than Blackman this week. If I was forced for that decision, I would play Blackman because I like the matchup, and I'm still just a little bit worried about Calvin, how healthy he is. There's a bye week coming up, week 9, I'm pretty sure, for Detroit, so I'm looking forward to that as a Calvin owner. But yeah, he's a must-start as far as it's Calvin, but there's guys you might have, like a Blackman, maybe like you, Marcus, you drafted Gordon late, that you'd have to look to, possibly.
Now, yeah, I was going to say, we'll talk about the Blackman trade that you made a little bit later on because I think that's a good topic to bring up later. But, to your example, I mean, Calvin Johnson, let's say, Matt, you did rankings this week.
Yeah.
Let's pretend that happened.
Yeah, if I did that.
Where would you have ranked Calvin Johnson?
You know me with my rankings. It takes me quite a while. It's hard to ask me right away. You've seen me over there.
Come back to you at the end of the podcast.
I mean, by then I'll be done. You've seen me. You yell at me about how long it takes. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to go too far on him. It's like Roddy in the start of the season. No, he'd be higher than that for me. Yeah, he'd be higher than that for me.
Still top 10. All right. So
I think he'd be top 10.
Then he's still a must-start. You're saying he's still a must-start.
Yes. But what I'm saying is there are situations possibly, I don't know, where you might have a Blackman and a Gordon sitting on your bench type thing. And I can understand if you don't play him, but if I have Calvin, I'm a big player studs guy.
All right. Moving on here to Reggie Bush. He seems to follow up a great week with just an okay week. So far this season, in order, 25-point game, 6-point game, 22, 6, and then 18. So I guess the history tells us he's going to have a 6-point game this week against the Bengals run defense, right? I mean, do you think there's any correlation to this? Do you think it's, he goes all out one week, maybe hurts himself a little bit, and the next week he's still kind of catching up to himself because he got injured the week before, and then it just keeps riding up and down? Do you think that's something that is possible, or do you think this is totally coincidental?
I think it's coincidental. I think it has to do with the matchups. This week going into Cincinnati, they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown in the last 3 games, so you can't, and he's not especially a strong runner in the red zone, but where he is effective is in the passing game. And they have allowed 21 receptions over that time for 114 yards and a TD. So I think this will be a good game for him. In terms of the trending, I think it's coincidental, matchup based, but that's just me. Maybe coming off a bye week, it might have some correlation, but I don't think game to game, week after week really matters. I think it's more about the matchups.
Matt, you got any thoughts on it?
No, I'd agree with Rob. Marcus, your idea sounds good. I mean, maybe if we'll see a little more of it. You get nicked up from game to game. And I don't think it's about him going all out. I think that he does that every weekend. I agree with you, Rob. I think it's more the matchup thing. And I still like Reggie quite a bit. As a guy that's that involved and that explosive, you got to love him in that Detroit offense.
Bengals side real quick, just a quick note. A.J. Green obviously got back on track last week with a nice game. I think he follows it up here with another nice game. The Lions have allowed an average of 34 points to opposing wide receivers in the last 3 weeks. That's an average. That's not a total of the last 3 weeks. That's average 34 points allowed to opposing wide receivers. So A.J. Green could have a dominant game here against the Lions. Bills, Dolphins. Rest of the season, Bills running back. Which one would you rather have? DJ Spiller or Fred Jackson? Spiller's officially been upgraded to probable for this game, but has had a dozen or less touches in 3 of the last 4 games. Jackson on the season has more touches, touchdowns, higher yards per carry, and total yards. Particularly in this game, the Dolphins are 29th against opposing running backs. So rest of the season, Fred Jackson or CJ Spiller, are you guys giving up hope on him?
CJ for me still. I just like the upside. Can definitely understand if it doesn't happen, though.
Yeah, CJ for me too. I mean, he's obviously not at 100%. I think once he gets there, the workload will start to favor him. And he's the more explosive guy. That's just the type of runner I like on my teams personally. But Jackson, he's been more consistent this year. So it's all about the risk you want to take.
So it sounds like a sweep. CJ Spiller obviously we like better for the rest of the season. How about in this game, though? This game you got to be going F-Jacks, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was quick and easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, he's banged up right now, Spiller. I gotta see it. Let me see a run where you don't go limping over to the sideline after you score a touchdown like that. Nice. It's just crazy.
A couple weeks ago, yeah.
He's got to get right.
Sneaky play this week. I think the Dolphins' defense is going to be a sneaky good defense to play here. Bills have allowed 19 sacks in the last 4 games and 2 defensive touchdowns. Playing against either a banged-up Thad Lewis or possibly Matt Flynn, off the waiver wire. It's a divisional game that they've had 2 weeks to prepare for, and Stevie Johnson's still banged up. So I think the Dolphins could be a sneaky defensive play here. Patriots and Jets. Gronkowski has finally been cleared to play. About time. My God, Jesus. We've only been having the Gronkowski watch, which should have been a drop in its own for the last, 6 weeks now? I mean, even preseason, we've been talking about this forever, when he'll be back. So in all seriousness, though, how many snaps do you think he gets in this game? And are you definitely starting him now that you know he's going to be playing?
Hey, you don't know he's going to be playing. He's been cleared to play. That doesn't mean he's going to play. I mean, they say he's going to, right? That's what we've been waiting for.
He's been cleared to play. Doesn't mean he's going to play. You're exactly right.
Yeah, so keep an eye on that. If he plays, Jimmy Graham's not there this week. I got him top. Well, I don't have him anywhere because, like you said earlier, I didn't rank him. But if I did, I'd have him top 3.
Still top 3. All right.
Yeah, and I think snaps. You asked the question, how many snaps? I think if he's coming back to play, he's getting at least 75% of the workload. They're not rushing him back, of course, no. So I think he's at least 75% of the workload.
But it's for that reason that I'm probably, if I've made it this far, I probably have a backup. I'd probably wait a week, personally, just to see what his snap count is. I don't think it's going to be high. So even if he's active, even if he's cleared to play, I'm still not buying in for this week. But in terms of the season as a whole, of course. But this week, I'm playing it safe on my teams.
Yeah, my guess on Gronkowski here is going to be 25 to 30 snaps. And my guess is that he probably finishes the game with 3 catches for probably 35 yards and no touchdowns is my guess here. But bigger question, do you think this moves Brady back into that top 5 quarterback territory?
I don't know if it's top 5. I don't know if it's top 5. Are you talking for the season?
For the season, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if it's top 5, and it's certainly not for the week. But I don't know if it's top 5 for the season. But it's closer to that. He still has some serious problems in the wide receiver position. Amendola just cannot stay healthy. I made a joke about it last podcast. When he plays, he probably gets hurt in the third quarter. Look what happens. He's hurt again. I mean, anybody from that hit would probably go down. But it was just the wide receivers for me scare me. Not quite top 5, but getting there.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, next question. More made out of China, Danny Amendola or Austin Collie? No, I'm just kidding. That's not a real joke. That's not a real question. But for the Jets side, seriously though, are you starting anybody on the Jets side in this game? No, right?
The Jets defense, but that's probably it.
That's even a real suspect, I think, against the Patriots, especially if Gronk's back. I mean,
well, you look what they've been doing against the run. They've been shutting down the run. I'm a believer in the Jets D. I'm probably more a believer than most, but I think they have a decent game here. I think the Pats are going to struggle.
Matt, any thoughts? Anybody you starting on the Jets team?
No, I mean I don't really like the defense too much from already being banged up.
The running back's a three-headed mess.
No, but I mean I guess we can give you some deeper league names. I don't mind Stephen Hill. I know he didn't have a huge game last week, but there was a play that would have been a huge bomb touchdown that Geno just missed him on. So he's a guy, but no, the Jets just aren't exciting on that side of the ball.
Well, looking at it now, Powell with the Pats defense banged up with Will Ferk out now. Mayo
Yeah,
out.
you know what? Great point. Yeah,
Powell
up the middle is.
Powell might have a good game here.
Yeah, because you know what? Goodson's out for the year. He's going to get all those receiving downs again. It's going to go back to him getting at least 15 touches a game, I think.
That is a good point. It should be interesting. Up the middle of the Patriots defense is banged up, obviously. Will Fork out, Mayo out for the year. So that is kind of interesting. Cowboys, Eagles, Vic listed as questionable, but I feel this is all semantics right now. I mean, if he's healthy enough to play last week, I think this is just an excuse to keep Foles in there and kind of not make it a big story. I kind of tweeted this out earlier this week, but I kind of said that if you told me week 1 I was starting Foles over Kaepernick, and then we'll talk about it a little bit later, but Jacobs, Matthews, and Fred Jackson over guys like MJD and Chris Johnson, I would have laughed at you, but that's just kind of been how the season's been going. Obviously, I think Foles has a good game here against the worst pass defense in the league and with the Cowboys. But my big question here is, after only having 93 receiving yards through the first 4 games, Riley Cooper has 120 yards last week. Do you think this is fluky, or do you think this is kind of the guy that Foles is locking onto and has a special connection with?
I think it's a little of both. I think I don't expect Cooper to be catching bombs like he did last week, but I do think there is a little connection there. I need Foles to throw 6 picks this weekend as a Vic owner. I need him to pull a hamstring or do something for me because I'm pretty invested in Vic, but unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen, and I think Cooper is going to benefit from Foles there and should have some decent games. Definitely worth watching. I don't know about rostering in all leagues, but definitely worth keeping a watch on.
Well, first of all, I want to say one thing. We here at Blindside Football never root for injuries, okay? So we don't hope Nick Foles hurts a hamstring.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes.
I know. We were talking about before podcast some pickups I made this week, but no, I mean, I don't know about the Riley Cooper thing. It's too hard to say. I don't know how much I think he's of a player. I don't know how good he is. So we'll see what happens with Foles, though. He looked great last week. He really did. And like you said, yeah, you're starting to Marcus this week, and I think that's a pretty good start. You spent some money on him, and you should have. You could be onto something. I mean, I need to see it one more time. Does he have another big game? Even if he doesn't have a big game, if the targets are there, if he's looking his way again, like you said, sometimes you come in and it's a quarterback that just has a good rapport with a certain wide receiver.
And as we talked about, he's got a prime schedule to do it, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, Yep.
Yeah, and last week Foles actually finished with the most fantasy points of all quarterbacks, all fantasy quarterbacks. So yeah, you do want to see it again here, but like I said, this is two of the worst defenses in the NFL. So this is going to be a shootout. Lots of scoring in this game. You're starting everybody on both teams, both sides of the ball. All offenses. Obviously, neither of these defenses, but offensive side, you're starting everybody on both teams because it's going to be a high-scoring game. It's going to be an exciting one to watch, that's for sure. Bears-Redskins. Cutler now has multiple touchdowns in 5 of 6 games this year. Is he a top 10 quarterback moving forward now? I mean, seems like every game now he's just throwing two or more touchdowns.
Well, if I already moved Wilson up to the top 10, then it's hard to move Cutler up there as well. But I'd like to just put the names next to each other and figure it out because I get your point. Yes, he is looking very good, and top 10 is certainly.
Yeah. You know what helps you figure out the top 10?
What?
Rankings.
I know that would help the top 10. He's in that conversation certainly. I put some money in to pick him up a few weeks ago. I loved his matchups coming up. I love it this week, and he's looking good. And he's got a weapon there in Alshon Jeffrey, to go with the obvious Brandon Marshall that is really looking like a pretty good offense there. I like Cutler for sure.
Yeah, and Matt, you mentioned the key word there, and that's matchups. Cutler, he's got some great matchups ahead. You look at Week 12 on, he's got St. Louis, Minnesota, Dallas, then Cleveland, which is probably the one exception there, but then he's got Philly and Green Bay. So I think if you're looking for a playoff quarterback right now, Cutler's the guy, and I think the matchups are gonna maybe take him to a top 10 and maybe higher. You never know.
Yeah, that's a good point. He does have a great matchup throughout those fantasy playoffs, and obviously he's been solid so far, so it's going to look like he's going to be pretty solid through those fantasy playoffs for you as well, which is what you want. You want consistency during your fantasy playoffs because, a 5 or 6 point game from your quarterback could just kill you in that, in a win or lose situation like your playoffs. Real quick, just a couple quick notes on the defenses here in this game. Everybody talks about how terrible the Redskins' pass defense is, but let's talk about their run defense for a second. They're allowing 23 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs this season. So Matt Forte should have a pretty nice day here. Redskins also have allowed a defensive touchdown to the opposing defense in 2 straight games. Likewise, the Bears defense has now had a touchdown in 3 of 6 games this year. So very possible that the Bears end up with a defensive touchdown here. Just something interesting. If you have the Bears defense, you're starting them. You drafted them high probably for a reason. But just to point out, probably a better than 50% chance that they get a defensive touchdown in this game.
Not to mention the greatest return man of all time in Devin Hester.
Yeah, that's true. RG3, I just have to say, only 1 passing touchdown in the last 3 games combined since Week 3. And yes, there was a bye week in the middle, but since Week 3 in fantasy points, he's quarterback 27. Some of the quarterbacks with more fantasy points than him include Tannehill, Locker, and Michael Vick. Even Brian Hoyer, who's obviously missed several games, is just 2 fantasy points behind RG3 since Week 3. So, are you getting worried about RG3?
It's funny. I'm actually on the complete opposite side.
You're buying low on him?
Yeah, he's running the ball more. I think things have got to get a little bit better there for me. I'm buying low on him. If I need a quarterback for the stretch run, and I'm not happy with what I have, he's a buy low type guy.
And I'm actually with Matt. I agree. I do like you said, that he's running a bit more. I think the emergence of Jordan Reed is going to help him out. It's no secret I'm high on Jordan Reed. Not this week. The Bears have only allowed 1 tight end touchdown this year, but moving forward through the season, I think he'll get more involved. And I think Griffin mixed with some added targets and some more run plays, I think will prove to be definitely relevant and might get back to where we all thought he would be at the beginning of the year.
All right. Rams, Panthers. Speaking of quarterbacks since Week 3, Cam Newton's actually the quarterback 8 since Week 3. This is kind of what he does. Starts the season off slow and then finishes strong. Last year finished quarterback 5, and then his rookie year was the number 3rd overall quarterback. So this is kind of what he does. Starts off slow, finishes strong. Jonathan Stewart, hopeful to to practice next week, and then obviously return back to the team. Ron Rivera is saying that he's hopeful that Stewart will be back to play in Week 9. Matt, I know you have some strong feelings about the whole D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart dilemma. What are your thoughts? When do you think Stewart will be back, if at all, and are you worried about him?
Yeah, I'm worried about him. He's got to be back by Week 11. And, there was a ton of talk. Oh, he's doing great, he's looking great, he's running, blah, blah, blah. And then as the time comes where he's ready to play, everyone was expecting him to be ready. He immediately, beginning of the week, is saying, I'm not ready to play this week. I don't know what's going to happen with him. I really don't. And I think that's why D'Angelo's value might last a little more than I initially was thinking, and most people are thinking as well.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. I actually had Stewart in our home league. I picked him up, I want to say 2 weeks ago. Just had a spot, thought I'd stash him, and I actually switched him out for another injured running back in Andre Brown. So I don't like Stewart's chances of coming back. I think Williams, you hold on to him for this week against St. Louis. I think he's going to have a great week, finally find the end zone, and then he's a sell high guy for you because he's been consistent. He's gotten the yardage, but I don't think he'll ever break that premier running back with Tolbert kind of snatching some of those touchdowns. And I think Stewart comes back, but I don't think it's anytime soon. I think it's more towards the end of that time frame as opposed to the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and if he comes back, he probably goes right back out again. I mean, that's highly likely.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a non-factor even when he comes back. He's going to take some carries away from D'Angelo Williams, but he's not going to have any fantasy value. If anything, he just kind of hurts D'Angelo Williams. Rams side of the ball, though, except for maybe Bradford, if you're in a bind or have Breeze on a bye, do you trust anybody on the Rams this week?
Yeah, Zach Stacy.
Austin Pettis. Zach
Stacy. Rob, I mean, you're probably going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I was, and I'm starting him this week. But I don't feel great about it. Carolina's, they're a strong defense, but what else is, like you mentioned, Marcus? What else is going to produce there? It's Stacy's their guy, and he practiced fully Thursday and Friday, so the ribs must be feeling a little better. So I think you got to rely on Stacy because he's it, But we'll see come Sunday. I'm definitely hoping for at least a rushing touchdown and a decent day out of him.
He did, you're talking about Carolina, like you said, Rob. Rough game for Adrian last week against them, but I don't know if that's, their defense or just the game the Vikings had in general. They were down all game. Stacy, we like him as far as, he's a starting running back on a team and he's going to get the touches. I don't know how great he's going to have of a day, but when the guy's going to get 18 to 20 touches, I think that's a good thing. So,
and we like the way he runs. He looks,
Yeah, absolutely.
Looks like a good back. He runs strong. He hits the holes well. So I like the way he runs. I think he looks better on tape than what his stat lines are. But hopefully he can put it together this week and find the end zone.
Say this. I think we underestimate the Panthers' defense a little bit too much. Obviously they've been really well. Matt, to your point, I mean, Minnesota obviously not the strongest of offenses, but kind of shut them down. And then we all remember a few weeks ago when they kind of shut down the Giants. Really took them out of the game. So we could see some of that here. It's not, no one's out running around saying that the Rams are the most powerful offense in the world. So, just something to take note of. It could be, could get into one of those types of situations real quick where they have to abandon the run.
Hey, you know what? We should bring one thing up. What do you guys think about Tavon Austin? I was way off on him. I was thinking Rookie of the Year. I think he's droppable in a couple weeks ago. So get him off your rosters if you've got him.
I saw a stat this week that in last week's game, he was only on the field for 4 snaps.
Right, yep.
4 snaps. I mean, this is not a guy you should have on your fantasy team at all. Stop waiting for the breakout game because it's not going to happen.
Right.
Chargers, Jaguars, this game probably features 2 wide receivers with the most hype in the NFL right now for fantasy football. Justin Blackmon and Keenan Allen hype has gone on way too far, way too far. It's just getting crazy. Matt, to your point earlier, you traded Justin Blackmon and Joseph Randle this week for Megatron. The undisputed number 1 fantasy wide receiver, obviously underperforming a little bit this year, but still the number 1 wide receiver. Myself in another league, in a PPR league, I traded Justin Blackmon and Willis McGahee for Brandon Marshall. who's probably the number 2 wide receiver in the NFL in a PPR format. This is just crazy. Absolute nuts. I wrote about this in the Mary Cheat dump that I wrote this week, but, this week he's got a not-so-friendly San Francisco pass defense, and then after that he faces the number 3 best pass defense in the Titans, gets the Cardinals and their number 2 pass defense in Patrick Peterson, plays 2 games against the number 1 pass defense, the Houston Texans, and then sandwiched in between those 2 Houston games, he's got Joe Hayden and the 4th-ranked Browns defense. This is just crazy. I mean, I understand what Justin Blackman's done these last 2 games, but let's look ahead to obviously the matchups he has coming up. He's got a tough road ahead of him. So if you can trade him like we just did and get Megatron or Brandon Marshall in return, that's just awesome. You need to do that. What do you guys think? Do you think the hype on Justin Blackman's gone too far, or do you think he's for real?
I think he's for real. I think he's the guy there, obviously. In terms of those trades you mentioned, I think it's important to point out that sometimes you look at trades just guys for guys and the talent, but it's like a chess match out there. The guy that Matt traded to was down in our league 1-5 and needed a must win, just lost Murray, so I can see why he might have made that trade, even though it sounds a little crazy. But when you're in a win now mentality, sometimes you do some desperate things for the given week. So as lopsided as it sounds, I think he made the right move. I think it was a good trade for Matt, obviously. But I think Blackman right now is the time that he's got his highest value. And it's funny, I was talking to Matt that night, and he was like, I'm going to wait a few weeks for his value to rise. How does the value rise from Blackman to Kelvin Johnson? I don't see how it gets any better than that.
Yeah, he's jumped the shark.
So I think Blackman, you've got his value right now. Trade him.
Well, hey, I just wanted to correct you, Marcus. You had said that he was playing San Francisco this week. He's playing San Diego.
San Diego, then San Francisco.
Yeah, so he's got a good matchup this week.
Yes.
That's what and I agree with both you guys. How much higher can the value get? I didn't realize it was that high yet. I was going to wait for the San Diego game, thinking another nice matchup, one more game, and then I'll be able to go get some crazy stuff for him. I agree with you, Marcus. I think it might be a little too far, but I'm loving Justin Blackman, and I know his matchups aren't the best. But on a team as bad as they are, that are going to continue to throw, and as good of a player he is, other than the injury concern that he has, I think he's still going to perform regardless of the matchups. He's going to have his down games, but I think he's a top 15, 20 guy. I'm telling you.
I have him in a dynasty league, and last year with Chad Henne, you saw a lot of 6 catches for 80-yard games, which obviously aren't going to kill you, but that's not Brandon Marshall and Megatron type level guys right there. I mean, that's just it's just crazy. I mean, the guy that I traded for with Brandon Marshall, he's actually number 1 in our league right now. He's 5-1, and he contacted me because he wanted Blackman, and he told me to name my price, and that's what we went with. I just find it amazing. But another guy whose value I think is kind of jumping the shark here a little bit, Keenan Allen. I mean, I understand, again, this is another guy that's had a couple of nice games in a row, but I saw another analyst this week post that he proposed a trade prior to last night's game, Larry Fitzgerald for Keenan Allen, and the other person denied it, which I thought really speaks volumes not only of where Larry Fitzgerald's value is, but where Keenan Allen's is as well. But what are you guys' thoughts on Keenan Allen? Do you think he's for real as well, or do you think he's going to fade back into that 25 to 30 wide receiver range?
I do think he's for real. He's the number 1 guy in San Diego. He looks to him frequently. Philip Rivers,
Eddie Royal in weeks 1 and 2.
What's that?
I said Eddie Royal in weeks 1 and 2.
Well, this is a rookie who is showing his improvement. You know what I mean? It's a different situation. Eddie Royal's a veteran that's been around. This kid, I think, is coming into his own. Targets are there. He's Philip Rivers' first read on a ton of plays, and he's a talented guy with good size. I think he's 6'2", 6'3". He was a drop away from 2 touchdowns last week, and I shouldn't say a drop. It would have been an outstanding catch. It was a shoestring type back of the end zone. I like him quite a bit, and I would take Larry for him just because, but I would probably be punching myself later for it.
And I think you mentioned the targets, Matt. I think his talent's definitely for real. I don't know if this production is, because he's got 20 out of his 27 targets this year, which is extremely high. I think that'll come down to reality a little bit, and I don't see his targets necessarily increasing a ton from what he's been getting the last couple weeks. So, I'm a little conservative on him, but the talent's definitely there.
Yeah, the talent's there, obviously, in dynasty leagues. I think he's another guy that in redraft leagues kind of jumping the shark a little bit. But 49ers Titans, can you guys believe that Chris Johnson is averaging just 12 carries and 1.9 yards per carry these last 3 weeks? And then not only that, but on the season he's being outscored by his teammate Nate Washington. I mean, that's how bad Chris Johnson has been this year. You know, I kind of mentioned I'm benching Chris Johnson earlier, and which, by the way, can we give him a new nickname? Can we stop reminiscing about something he did 4 years ago? I mean,
I agree.
Can we seriously come up with a new nickname? Can the fantasy football community come up with a new nickname for Chris Johnson? Because it's the CJ2K thing has just happened so long ago. I mean, Christ, I don't even know. It'd be like LaDainian Tomlinson still going around calling himself the MVP of the NFL. I mean, you're taking one thing from years ago and just living off of it forever. But like I said, I'm benching Chris Johnson this week in favor of guys like Brandon Jacobs, Ryan Matthews, and Fred Jackson. So that kind of tells you where his value is going. But 49ers side, Vernon Davis, having that monster game last week. Are you guys buying into him? I think I had him third in my rankings. Rob, you had him fourth. I mean, for me, it seems to be that Kaepernick doesn't throw the ball that much and doesn't throw it very well. But when he does throw it, he's looking to Vernon Davis. What are you guys' thoughts on Vernon Davis going forward?
I like him. I think I ranked him pretty high this week, but I think I might have underestimated the Titans D here. It's a decent defense. It's not the best matchup, but he's the guy. Bolden had that huge week 1, but hasn't been necessarily stepping up since then. So I mean, I like him as the only option there, but I'm not necessarily buying into that production of last week every week for him for sure.
I think he's ascended top 5 wide receiver tight end type guy. I definitely like him. I'm still scared about Kaepernick. I think a tight end is a guy that's a little bit easier to shut down. They're in the heart of the defense a lot, if you know what I mean. Like as far as where they're lining up, I do like how they move him around the field. But as a tight end, he's one of the better guys for sure. I definitely like him. There's not many better that you could do.
And maybe looking back, Marcus, CJ2K, maybe we go CJ2 yards per carry.
Yeah,
as you mentioned in your stat line.
You know what? I was looking up. How many yards per carry is it?
He had 1.9 last week. That's what Marcus says.
In the last 3 weeks, he's averaging 1.9 yards per carry.
All right, so why don't we call him CJ 1.9 YPC? There you go.
That is very R2D2 like.
Yeah.
Moving on to Browns-Packers here, though. No Randall Cobb this game. James Jones looking like he's questionable right now, but hasn't practiced all week, so it's not looking good for James Jones. Jake Stoneburner, we talked about him on the Tuesday podcast. He's a tight end being brought up from the practice squad, which makes me believe the reports about Jermichael Finley coming in and kind of splitting out wide as a wide receiver for this game. So my question is, with Joe Hayden on Jordy Nelson, which Packers receiver in this game do you think will have the biggest day? Do you think it'll be Nelson with Hayden on him? Do you think it'll be Finley splitting out as a wide receiver? Or do you think Jarrett Boykin, comes out of nowhere and kind of has a huge day?
The big sleeper is the Boykin, but I think I'm excited about Jermichael Finley. I really am. I think I was talking to you, Marcus, the other day about a league you're in, and you were thinking about trading Gronk. Hopefully you didn't if he's playing this weekend. But I was saying go get Jermichael Finley before he becomes a top 5 tight end. I think it's exciting that they're going to be moving him out there. It suits his skills a little more. So I'm looking at him because, like you said, I think Jordy's going to be the focus of the defense, and I think Jermichael can have a good day this week.
Yeah, I mean,
for the rest of the year.
A quick note that I saw on Twitter the other day, I believe I read that once Randall Cobb came out of the game, that's when Jermichael Finley, his 75 receiving yards last week, highest on the season. He had all 75 yards once Randall Cobb was out of the game, and had them all in the second half. So it kind of tells you that, once Randall Cobb was out of the game, that's kind of who Aaron Rodgers was looking for.
And
So,
what's encouraging is Rodgers he's been looking for him. Finley has seen 6+ targets in his 4 full games this year, in all 4 of them. So, he's gotten the targets with him there. I think this even just catapults him to double-digit targets.
Yeah, he's gonna see a lot of work in this game. My guess too here is that Eddie Lacy will probably have 25+ carries in this game as well. Brown's side, I just want to mention that the Packers are allowing 300 yards passing in 3 of the 5 games this year they played in, and multiple touchdowns, 2 or more touchdowns in 4 out of 5 games this year. I got a bold prediction on this later, but just kind of wanted to throw that out there. You can throw on the Packers, and you can easily throw on the Packers. Texans-Chiefs, I think we're going to see a lot of running in this game. Case Keenum, the 3rd-string quarterback for the Texans, has been named the starter here. Andre Johnson listed as questionable. I think we're going to see a game where maybe 40 carries is not out of the question between Ben Tate and Arian Foster here. All the more reason why the Chiefs will remain the number 1 team defense after this week. Facing a 3rd-string quarterback, and they're primarily just going to run the ball against him, which the Chiefs are very good at. The Chiefs defense is going to have a field day here. By the way, Chiefs have only allowed 1 rushing touchdown this year to a running back, so I think they're going to, while they may bend, they're not going to break to Arian Foster and Ben Tate. Meanwhile, Chiefs side, the only people I think you're starting here are Charles and their defense. What are you guys' thoughts on this game? Are there any Chiefs players you're starting besides Charles in the Chiefs D?
Not for me, no. We haven't seen anything out of the wide receivers. I don't care what Donnie Avery does. He's not coming on my roster or playing for me, for that matter. Like you said, I definitely like the Chiefs' defense this week quite a bit. If I ranked, they would have been pretty high for me against that quarterback, a rookie quarterback. And basically, you got to know what they're going to be looking to do. Like you said, run the football, and the Chiefs can stop that. So nobody else there, though. It's just not an exciting team.
Yeah, I'd agree with Matt, but I do think the matchup is interesting. You look at what Foster's been doing over the last 3 games. He's had 487 total yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. I think this will be the test for that Chiefs D, as long as Foster can keep it up, which I think he can. So this is going to be a good battle, Charles versus Foster, and the Chiefs D stepping in there. I think it'll be an interesting game to watch for sure.
It's going to be, like I said, there's going to be a lot of running in that game. Ravens-Steelers, Le'Veon Bell, I think, is going to be in for a long day in this game. Currently averaging just 2.85 yards per carry, faces the Ravens defense, which is number 1 against opposing running backs. Ravens only allowing 3.8 yards per carry to running backs this season, so it doesn't look like it's going to get any better for Le'Veon Bell anytime soon. Aside from Torrey Smith and Ray Rice, are you comfortable with any Ravens in this game? Steelers 3rd best against the opposing quarterbacks, 9th best against opposing wide receivers, and 3rd best against opposing tight ends. So aside from Torrey and Rice, nobody in the Ravens you're touching there either.
I don't hate Marlon Brown. He's a guy, a deeper league, bye-week fill-in, guy that has an opportunity to score a touchdown. But other than that, and not that I'm excited about him, you know what I mean?
I'd say very, very boomer bust potential with Marlon Brown, I feel.
Yeah, you're hoping for a touchdown for the most part.
Yeah, and I'd agree. The Ravens make me nervous this week. With Rice not performing, with the threat of that run game, not necessarily as it was in past years. I think the Steelers are just going to eat up the Ravens this week. I'm really nervous for that offense.
This game has all the makings, I feel, of a low-scoring kicker game. Where we see a 15-12 game, where we see 9 total field goals or something like that. Just, crazy, field goals happening here. No touchdown scoring, no big playmakers in this game. Broncos-Colts, I feel like when we talk about this game, we should be playing Diddy's Welcome Home song in the background. I probably want to give the over-under on that song being played in the pregame and during the game at, 3. I feel like they're just going to play that over and over again with pictures of Peyton Manning. But if you've been living under a rock, obviously Peyton Manning will be returning back to Indianapolis and going to be honored before the game. And he's going to just pick them apart in this game, just like he's done every team this year. But, you probably already knew this. Broncos' offense has been elite this year. in addition to Peyton being the number 1 overall quarterback in fantasy. Prater, their kicker, is number 1 kicker overall. Matt's boy Noshan, the number 4 running back in fantasy right now. The wide
baby!
the receivers, Welker, number 2 in fantasy. Demarius, number 6. Decker, 16. And then the Orange Julius himself, Julius Thomas, number 2 overall fantasy tight ends. Like I said,
Orange Julius, is everyone gonna know what Orange Julius was? That nationwide?
I like that.
We're calling him Orange Julius.
I like that. I just hope it wasn't only like a New England thing. Everyone's like, what the hell are they talking about, Orange Julius? But I know what you're talking about.
Probably the same way we don't really know what a Whole Foods is, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully people get that joke. But, I mean, in breaking news, their offense is obviously really, really good. On the other side, their D is just really, really bad, allowing 229 yards per game to opposing wide receivers, 30th in the league. They've allowed a rushing touchdown to a running back in every game this year. So we kind of know that Trent Richardson's going to have a rushing TD in this game because that's what the Broncos do. They let up a rushing touchdown. But how many yards do you think Trent Richardson finishes this game with? Do you think he finally cracks 60 yards for the first time in 10 games?
Yep, I think so. Because I've been riding this train the whole time. I'm not going to get off.
God, it is just that train just consists of Trent Richardson, Noshan Moreno, and Justin Blackman for you, huh?
Yeah, but Trent.
Oh, board, choo-choo. Go ahead, Rob. What were you going to say?
I said I jumped off the train full willingly. I mean, especially in this game, Peyton's going to throw 10 touchdowns. I hope he points up to Jim Irsay in his box every single one of them. Just rubs it in his face that they got rid of him so easily. But I think this game is not going to be a running game. It's going to be a passing game. Look for some big days out of the Colts wideouts, and look for a good day for Luck. But I like the matchup, but not for Richardson.
Yeah, like I said, I think Richardson gets a touchdown plunge here, and I like his matchup against their defense because their defense does allow a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. I think this is the game he finally does crack 60 yards, but I still don't think he cracks 80 yards in this game. Richardson is he's just looking bad. He's going from bad to worse. I don't trust him at all.
Speaking of that, Matt, what would it take to jump off the train on Richardson here? Are you just going to ride this all season under 60 yards, or?
Yeah, because I still firmly believe that it's just a case of learning the offense more, being more comfortable with. They want to keep Andrew Luck upright. That was one big thing that Jim Irsay, man of many words, decided to tweet about one day, getting the quarterback killed. So Trent Richardson needs to get the offense down. He's not catching the football, and he's very capable. That's going to come. You see flashes out of him, and you saw production last year. Like I said, I just think he needs to be more familiar with the offense. It's going to come. Come playoff time, you're going to be happy that you stuck with me and Trent.
I just think that is a losing formula, I feel. Losing formula. Speaking of losing formulas, Monday Night Football, Matt's Vikings playing the Giants. Hey,
both of them. Woo, we're the best. Hey, we got the best record in this game.
Yeah, not too often you guys can say that. Moving on to your third quarterback here with Josh Freeman getting the start. I know it's a huge shot in the dark here, but one receiver will emerge from this game. I feel that Freeman is going to lock on to one guy and just keep feeding him the ball. But the question is, who is it? Who do you guys think is the one guy he locks onto? Is it Jennings? Is it Patterson? Is it Simpson? Is it Rudolph? Who do you think it is that he locks onto and just keeps hitting?
No, the question here is what's going to have more audience? The game, which is just horrendous, or my wife's new favorite show. I think it's called Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, and I think that's probably going to be more viewed. Yeah. This is going to be a terrible. This is going to be a terrible, disgusting football game. It's going to be like when you used to go watch the JV at high school. Oh, it's so shitty being a Vikings fan.
Yeah.
Sorry. What did you ask again?
It's not much better being a Giants fan, I feel, right now. But which receiver is gonna be the guy that Freeman locks onto and picks as his new favorite target?
Probably Greg Jennings. I think he's the best receiver they have. or was it Aaron Rodgers that made him great? I think he's a good player, so I guess him. That's going to be my guess. But I'll talk about a pass catcher for the Vikings later on in my bold predictions.
I think it's Rudolph. I would hope it's Patterson. They got to get him more involved. I mean, he's just he's just got so much talent, so much potential that I'd love to see them get him more involved. But I do think it's Rudolph, especially after last week, and a simple game plan, checking down to that tight end. I think Rudolph should follow up his game last week with a pretty decent game this week.
So if you're following at home, this is not going to help you whatsoever, because Matt, you're going with Jennings. Rob, you like Rudolph, and you kind of feel that Patterson might be involved, and mine is a total gut call, and I'm saying Jerome Simpson. So congratulations to everybody listening at home.
Flip a coin.
We didn't help you one bit. So
hey, you know what? If they seriously need to,
one of us will have bragging rights next week, and we'll see who it is.
If they seriously need to consider one of these guys, I think they're beyond help anyways. So
this is true. That is true. They probably haven't listened this 45, 50 minutes into the podcast. By now they've turned this off because they've stopped listening. So this isn't helping anybody right now. So we'll move on. Hakeem Nicks has not scored a touchdown since week 14 of last year. Only 2 games this year with over 100 receiving yards. Minnesota, though, allowing the 8th most points to opposing wide receivers. Are you trusting him this week? I'm feeling I have a hard time with him just because, like I said, he's not getting the touchdowns, and it's so hard to count on him for yardage.
Well, Vikings are missing some key cogs. Harrison Smith's going to be out, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure he's out this game, and I think he's our best defensive back. He's all over the field for us. Xavier Rhodes is banged up, and even though he's our rookie, he could be the best cornerback on this team. Nicks, I told you earlier, Marcus, only one red zone target this year, which is interesting. You know, you think of him as a guy that goes up and gets footballs. I do like him this week, but I think it's a week where Victor Cruz bounces back just because of the lack of production in the last few games for him. But I like the passing offense and the offense in general against this terrible Minnesota Vikings team.
Yeah, for me, I'll talk a little bit more of my bold predictions about that.
All right. Brandon Jacobs obviously exploded in the scene last week. You know, Vikings allowing the most fantasy points to opposing running backs this season. I'm stuck with this dilemma, but, I mean, just a quick yes or no. Would you start Jacobs over Nicks? I am. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's almost a shoo-in he's scoring a touchdown.
I agree.
And by he, I mean Jacobs.
Definitely.
Yeah. Hey, here's a name to go out there and talk about, though. Michael Cox. Just look at it, just because if you've got a roster spot like I did this week, I picked him up. You know, Jacobs is coming in banged up. He's not a young man. If he gets an opportunity against this terrible, pathetic Minnesota Vikings team, if he can get in a game and get some time, who knows what you got with him. Just a name to throw out there.
If you have a roster spot, though, would you pick up Cox over Andre Brown?
That's a good question. I probably would. No, I probably wouldn't. I guess I'd rather have Andre Brown. Yeah, I agree with you there.
And I see Marcus smiling. I should have said Michael Cox, like Reggie Bush.
Yeah, I was just thinking if you wanted a minute of Rob and Matt talking about Cox, there
you go. That's why. Hey, by the way, and that's why he was smiling. He was enjoying it.
Good talk about some Cox right there. So let's jump into bold predictions. All right, so my bold predictions this week, I got a couple here. Le'Veon Bell, I think, I kind of told you he's going to be in for a long day. I'm going to say under 40 yards rushing for him, which, I mean, I guess if you keep doing it all season, it starts to not become a bold prediction anymore, but I'm still going to go with it. Jacobs, the guy that we just talked about, I'm going to say over 20 fantasy points this week for him, and he's going to be a top 5 fantasy running back this weekend. Matt, I got a good one for you, one that you're going to hate because I'm not really saying a particular name or putting any particular stats to it.
Yeah, but, okay. That's your thing, I know.
Nick Foles and Tony Romo will combine for over 50 fantasy points. So, Matt, that one's for you.
That's good. That's good.
And then, finally,
hopefully it's not Romo with 40 and Foles with 10, and then you screwed the Foles guy.
Yeah, maybe, we'll see. Brandon Weeden is my final one. He's going to have over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game because I think they're going to be behind. And like I said, you can throw on the Packers defense. So those are my bold predictions. What do you guys got?
My first one is that Mike Cox will score this weekend. Me and the wife are going out Saturday night, gonna have a few drink. No, I'm just kidding. So I think one guy that I love is D'Angelo this week. And Rob, you kind of screwed it for me earlier because you kind of threw it out there. I think he's going to have 150 total yards and a touchdown this week. I think he finally gets that touchdown. The Rams are the 31st worst running defense against the running backs in the league. They've let up 6 rushing touchdowns already. So I think Big Fat Tolbert takes the seat for a minute, and D'Angelo actually gets in there. And then Rob, you actually earlier we were talking about which wide receiver you think might have the biggest game. I guess I probably should have gone with Rudolph because he's a bold prediction of mine. 11 targets last week. I know it's a different quarterback. He's just a big guy, and if you're a quarterback that's not familiar with the offense, he's your safety valve type thing. He's a guy you can just kind of throw it in his general area. But not only that, Musgrave, the offensive coordinator, has been talking a lot in the Twin Cities radio about how he needs to be more involved, and there was a lot of talk of this prior to last week's game. Look what happened, 11 targets. He was utilized throughout. It wasn't just a garbage time thing either. So I like Rudolph this week. Oh, and some stats to back that up. I'm sorry. They are the 27th against tight ends, and they've let up 5 touchdowns. And what does he do? He scores touchdowns.
Definitely. And I actually had D'Angelo as one of mine as well, but I'll list the other 3 that I got here. Mike Glennon, I think he's a quarterback. I think he's going to have a great week this week.
I think he's a quarterback?
Yeah, I noticed that. I think he's a quarterback.
I think he might be a quarterback. He might be a running back.
Bold prediction, he takes a snap as a quarterback this week.
Yeah. Glennon will throw a pass as a quarterback. No, I think he's a quarterback that's going to have a great game. Every quarterback to face Atlanta has thrown multiple touchdowns. They're allowing 292 yards on average in the air and 2.4 touchdowns per game. So I think Glennon's the guy to keep an eye on. I think he'll have a good day against Atlanta. Eli is another one. I know I'm sticking with the quarterbacks, but as we mentioned, no Harrison Smith against a defense that's allowing 319 yards to the air, the 4th most. So I think Eli is going to have a big day. And as I mentioned with the question about Nix, I think Nix will be a benefactor to that, obviously. I think Cruz will take a good chunk of that as well, but I think Nix should have a good day as well. And then my last bold prediction, kind of going a different route with a negative bold prediction here. Hate to be the negative guy here, but I think Torrey Smith doesn't break 30 yards. I say that because the Steelers D, as we talked about, they held A.J. Green and Brandon Marshall to a combined 93 yards. This is a good defense against number ones. And then lastly, I just want to throw a bold prediction out there for the year right now. I think Justin Blackmon, and you can take this with you for this week too, I think he's going to lead the league in targets this year, even with missing his 4 weeks with his suspension. I think they have nobody else to go to. They're a horrible team that's going to be passing. I think Blackman's going to lead the league in targets.
So, Rob, do you kind of agree with me as far as I know Marcus was a few times, and he's got some valid points about the matchups Blackman has coming.
Yep.
Do you agree that, with the amount of work he's going to get because of how bad they are and the fact they're always going to be behind, he's almost matchup proof?
I would agree because, Henne, and especially with Henne in there and not Gabbard, I think Henne, he's not a great quarterback, obviously, but he's competent, and he'll find a way to get Blackman the ball. So I'd agree with you, Matt, on that one.
So you keep saying that obviously they have nobody to throw the ball to. What about Cecil Shorts? He led the NFL in targets up until Blackman came back. You don't think Cecil Shorts is going to be involved in that offense?
I think he'll be involved. Obviously not this week, being banged up, but I still think, even look at last week before he was healthy, or before he went down. Blackman was the guy. So, I think they're both going to have a ton of targets, don't get me wrong. I just think Blackman is going to 2-to-1 get more than Shorts will.
Last year when they both played together, Shorts had 979 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. I don't think Shorts is going away by any means. I do think Blackman obviously is going to outperform Shorts, but I don't think Shorts is going away by any means. So that's the only reason. I just think that, a lot That's a lot of targets, especially after missing 4 games to lead the NFL.
I agree, and that's why it's a bold prediction. And to clarify, I don't think Shorts is going away either. He's definitely worth rostering. I'm just saying, I think Blackman, as he keeps emerging with his productivity, like he's had the past couple weeks, I think Henny's going to look to him more and more, even over Short. But I still think, like you said, there's 2 guys there on a team that's going to throw the ball a ton. They're both relevant. I just happen to think Blackman's going to get the good share of the targets.
But make sure to follow me, Matt, and Rob all on Twitter. Me at Marcus Katkin, Matt at Matt Dugal, and Rob at R. Drouin. And keep sending your questions for the podcast to #BlindsidePod or blindside@blindsidefootball.com. As you know, Matt, Rob, and I obviously every Sunday, tweet, about your start-sit questions. You send them to #AskBlindside. Just a little housekeeping. We're not going to be actually doing it this weekend because we're all actually going to be busy. But make sure to tweet your questions maybe a little bit early to us, and we'll try to check them as often as we can. But like I said, won't quite be as available as we normally are. So a couple quick questions we have. We're going to try to quickly get through these because I know we're going over a little bit on time. But at Javajon on Twitter asks, would you trade Des Bryant for Andrew Luck and Reggie Wayne in a 2-quarterback PPR league? His other quarterbacks are Drew Brees, Michael Vick, and Terrell Pryor. This is an easy one for me. I would say no, just because I'm happy with Brees and Pryor, and I think the drop you're taking from Des Bryant to Reggie Wayne is too much.
I agree. I mean, once you said, I was thinking yes, but once you said who we had already for quarterbacks, I'm okay with Pryor in a standard league as my guy for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Not a high pick.
As a follow-up question, he asked, would you rather trade Moreno for Luck, his other running backs, or Reggie Bush and Matt Forte? I would say absolutely.
No, you've already got your quarterbacks. Why do you need to go get them? Keep Moreno.
I like Luck a little bit more than Pryor. Get Pryor and Brees again, 2-quarterback league, so you got to start 2.
I'm going with Matt just because of Reggie Bush's injury risk.
I like how you clarified there.
I think you got to with Reggie Bush getting injured as often as he does. I think Marino as a safety net and maybe even starting him in some of these weeks is a good guy to have to hold on to.
All right, and it's spelled Renee_Gade, but I'm sure it's Renegade. Asks, would you trade Keenan Allen for Stephen Ridley? Here's another Keenan Allen question. Would you trade him for Stephen Ridley?
You got to know what the roster looks like, but I'm going to say no.
Then
I'm going to say yes, actually. I think Ridley's back. Hopefully, we'll see. Not this week, but I think he'll be back long.
Oh, wait, okay, yeah. I was looking at it from the other way. I wouldn't give up. I want Ridley.
I was going to say I would rather have Ridley too. In a bubble without knowing his whole roster, yes, I would rather have Ridley as well.
Yeah.
At Adam_Rainbolt, he's actually a good friend of mine, one of the owners of FakePigskin.com, so make sure you check them out. But he kind of asks, for owners with Gronk and Cameron, what would you do moving forward? I obviously think you need to move one of them if you have both. And I think right now Gronk's value, it may be higher than it is right now, but there's a lot of buzz about Gronk right now. So for me, I would go out and kind of throw his name out there and see what you can get for trade offers. What do you guys think?
Can you repeat it again for me?
If you own Gronk and Cameron, what would you do moving forward?
Yeah, I think I agree with you because of the pull you'd get with Gronk. Right now, he's all over the place. And even when he wasn't, he was still Gronk. How many guys picked him, almost like he was going to be there? So Gronk's got the name, and I'm still confident in Cameron. So, yeah, I'm trading Gronk as well.
As crazy as it is, I'd probably hold on to them both. If you got Cameron, you most likely took a lottery pick on him. So I would see what Gronk does. I agree with you. He could totally flop, and this could backfire on you. But he could also be the Gronk of old, in which case you got a difference maker there at the tight end position. So I might hold on to him, play Cameron until Gronk breaks out or flops. And, worst case, at least you have, that solid tight end that you're going to need come playoff time.
Yeah, for me, I'm not worried about Gronk flopping. I'm more worried about him re-injuring his arm.
Yeah, Rob, I think that's a good point, especially where we are in the season now. If you've got a good record and you're confident in your team, it might be worth keeping both, like you said, and maybe making a deal later on in the season as you get more comfortable with Gronk or Cameron. Either way, so yeah, that's a good point.
Our old buddy Pete at Gonzo Knox asks, if Foles is a starter for the rest of the season, him or Kaepernick rest of the season, who do you like? I take Foles. What do you guys got?
I got Foles.
Foles.
And then he asks, would you play Dez and Terrence Williams in PPR, or would you start Mike Wallace over Williams? I would probably go Wallace there.
I agree with you. I'm Mike Wallace as well. He's still, he's new to the team. I think things are going to get better there. They paid him a lot of money, and he has had a few good games. I agree with you, Marcus, for sure.
PPR, I'm going Williams just because Romo's going to throw the ball, and you're going to own the majority of people grabbing those. Unless Witten emerges, you pretty much have the offensive passing game there with Miles Austin sort of receding. But in a standard league, you're right, I'd probably go Wallace. But because it's PPR, I'd probably stick with Williams.
Then he asks, out of these three people, pick two of them, Gio Bernard, Danny Woodhead, and Ruben Randall. He didn't specify standard scoring or PPR, so I'm just going to say Gio definitely regardless. And then for me, if it's standard scoring, I go Randall. And if it's PPR, I'm going Woodhead. What do you guys think?
I'm going Gio and Randall regardless of the format.
And I'm actually going Gio and Woodhead regardless. Randall, until he steps up as a wide receiver 2, I think he's just sort of – I think these are kind of fluky for myself personally, so I would go Gio and Woodhead.
There you go, Gonzo. We didn't really help you at all besides
Not
Gio.
at all.
All of us different guys with Woodhead and Randall, so that really didn't help you. But that does it for the podcast. I don't know. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we go?
No, that'll be it. Have a good
That's
one.
it. Good luck.
All right, see you guys. And like I said, we're not readily going to be available on Sunday, but if you have a few questions, try to hit us up early, and we'll try our best to get back to you. All right, have a good one.
Yo, check it, it's my time. I'm rapping about Blindside, fantasy football podcast in this rhyme because they got me the inside scoop on Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he's that dude on Cam Newton. Yeah, they give me the news more on Megatron, Calvin Johnson if I stay tuned. On all quarterbacks, RG3 happens to be the fastest QB in the league. In fact, Colin Kaepernick is rider QB for them 49ers. It ain't hard to see, Some awesome people hosting, Marcus Katkin and Matt Dugal. You should be joining, skinny or fat, short or tall. Anyone can tune in to Blindside Football. Have a try, dude, listen on